to the Metro on WDET, broadcasting live from the Mackinac Policy Conference. In 2016, many liberals didn't take Donald Trump seriously. They thought he was wacky, ridiculous, offensive, and not a serious candidate for president. But during that time, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell thought differently. She was speaking with her constituents downriver, and it was prior to President Trump's first term that she realized Trump was well liked, that he had a good chance at becoming the most powerful person in America. Almost a decade later, Trump has become central to the Republican Party and our politics writ large. Democrats have spent a lot of that time becoming the anti-Trump party. But after losing the 2024 election, many Democrats believe that position isn't enough. They need to stand for something. So what do Democrats stand for? What should they stand for? What do they need to do to win back the country, specifically the low-income and marginalized folks they claim to champion? To discuss this and more, we have Congresswoman Debbie Dingell here with us. Congresswoman Dingell, welcome back to the Metro.
It's great to be with you, and nice to see you on Mackinac Island.
Likewise. Tell me, why do you think people support President Trump?
I have a lot of feelings about Donald Trump. Many of them are very complicated. But I think he speaks directly. He understands people's insecurities. He understands their concerns. He doesn't use politically correct language. There are days that I cringe. But in 2016, Democrats did a terrible job on trade. They did not understand how many union workers had seen their jobs shipped overseas, that NAFTA was a terrible trade policy. I talked to Hillary Clinton about it till I was blue in my face. I had many people yelling at me, still do. A lot of people, I don't think the way that Donald Trump's doing trade policy now is right, but it's a tool in a toolbox. And I think he understands, this is a billionaire who is creating havoc in many people's lives, but he understands they're hurting. And they want to see somebody care about them.
And he's been able to speak to that.
Successfully. He won an election again.
As we think about the results of the 2024 election, Democrats lost ground on pretty much all demographic groups in America. Why do you think, Congresswoman Dingell, the Democratic coalition has atrophied in the way that it has?
Well, I think there are a lot of issues and reasons. And by the way, I think Republicans are going to have a hard time in the off-election year because they're hurting people where it's going to matter. The bill that we passed last week I'm trusting that there are going to be Republican senators like Josh Hawley, who called the Medicaid provisions immoral, are going to be able to fix it on that side. But when you rip health care away from people, I think if you're a child that's hungry in this country, that we should be able to make sure you can go to school and have something to eat and have a beginning start. It's the bill we passed last week was the largest cut in food assistance in the history of this country. In the last election, people were hurting. I go to the grocery store every Sunday morning, and people know I'm going to be there now. And they would bring me their eggs and say, see how much it costs this week? People, sometimes people are nice, and some people just make really snarky comments. People are worried about their health care. If they're sick, we've addressed it. Affordable care took care of a lot of people, but they're always at risk of losing it. And medicine costs too much in this country. That's going to matter. So they're Democrats. You know what I say to my friends? I'm in a labor. I have a rule. And every weekend I try to be at a couple of farmers markets. Many times it's 4 or 5. I try to be in a union hall. I try to be in a veterans hall. I go to special events. I go to the grocery store. You're where real people are, and I don't go with anybody. I go with no entourage. I don't have any staff. I go me. And people talk to me, and they tell me what's on their minds. And a lot more Democrats need to do that.
You're talking about spending time hearing from real folks, immersing yourself in the community, Congresswoman Dingell. I'm wondering, though, what do Democrats need to do to win again, to create a plan that's not just the anti-Trump plan?
Can't be anti-Trump. We have to have, look, we got to start on our 2028 plan, Project 2028. But in the next, I'm working on this now for House Democrats when we have the second 100 days. What are we going to work for? How are we going to lower costs? People want to see lower costs. People can't afford homes. How are they going to afford housing? What are we going to do to try to get that done? By the way, Republicans are going to block it at first, but we got to talk about it. What are we going to do about health care? And people want to rip it away. We need to make health care affordable for everybody. And when you're sick, you need to be able to go to the doctor. I actually agree with Donald Trump on, and if you live in this country, you shouldn't be paying more for drugs than any other country is, because we spend more money. We spend 3 to 10 times more on research than other countries do, and that's how much more drugs are in this country. I offered that amendment in committee, and every Republican voted against it. Donald Trump thinks it's in that bill. It's not. Republicans voted against it.
But how do you get more people's attention? Because it can't just be at the farmers markets.
We've got to change our messaging, and we've got to talk about what we're for and what we're going to do. And when we get elected, how we are going to work to make people's lives better. But it also is going to be by going in the veterans halls and going to the churches and meeting with people and talking to them and telling them what you're going to accomplish.
Could you stay on that for a moment and give us an example? You mentioned that you have folks coming to you with eggs and saying, I can't afford these eggs. Trump vowed to lower the prices of things like eggs. Tell me a specific story of a constituent or someone that you have encountered and the pain that they have told you they're experiencing.
The ones that are sticking with me, I was going to my asthma doctor at the University of Michigan, and probably got stopped by 20 people before I ever got up to the office. But on the elevator, a mother who had a son in the wheelchair just started crying with me on the elevator and wanted me to promise that she'd still be able to take her son to the doctor and they weren't going to take away his health care. And I just hugged her and let her sob and said, I'm going to make sure you can. And then told the head of the hospital I promised her she was still going to get care. And I'll go out and make sure we can pay for that child's care. But I've got to make sure that we can do that for every child. I was at an event with some seniors, and a woman got up whose husband's in a nursing home who has Alzheimer's and said, are they going to put my husband on the street? Are we going to have no place to live? Because, Medicaid is the largest payer of long-term care in this country. We have no idea the fear and anxiety that we have put into people across this country.
Have you experienced anything like this before in terms of the numbers of people who are approaching you and telling you about the pain and anguish and uncertainty that they're feeling right now as a lawmaker?
I want to say, you go through different periods of time and I've had some interesting moments. It's not been, the last 2 years have been really rough since the Hamas attack on Israel and people are upset, but watching what was happening on university campuses. But the last couple of months, people they have all kinds of opinions. Wherever I go, people come up to me to talk. Some of them, I got off an airplane and a man stopped me and told me I had to vote for this bill, that my husband would have voted for this bill. And I said, no, he wouldn't have voted for this bill. He wouldn't rip health care away from anybody. There are people that come up and thank me. There are people that just come up in total tears and say, what are we going to do? Are you fighting? Are you fighting to save our democracy? Or what are you going to do if the president doesn't listen to the Supreme Court? I have to say that more people just period come up and want to talk. And I'm doing more town halls than most people are too.
It kind of puts it into a clearer focus why it seems like we are seeing more lawmakers who are stepping back or stepping down at this time, because it does feel like a heated, especially heated and divisive time. I do want to go back to something that you mentioned, Congresswoman
But, I want to
Dingell.
say something.
Yes,
As an
please.
elected official, you got to be responsive. You got to be out there. You got to be talking to people. You can't run away from it. You need to listen to them, and you need to solve their problems. Try to. Please
try to. The Democratic Party, it is divided over a number of things. And I want to go back to something that you mentioned, which is it is divided over whether it should give unconditional support to Israel. Do you think we should continue sending money to Israel as that country continues its bombardment of Gaza and as it keeps aid from getting to thousands of children who UNICEF says are on the brink of starvation?
Look, I want to say that I'm worried about everybody in this. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. The murder we saw of 2 embassy employees. I was in Washington when that happened. I mean, we have to stand up against hate wherever we are seeing it. But we also, what's happening in Gaza and these starving children and the blockade of food, it's not right either. President Trump's got to step up and address that. We need a solution so that we stop this senseless murder on all sides.
Well, but that doesn't sound to me like something I would hear you say about, I mean, we can't rely on Trump right now to stand up for a lot of things. And so that seems to me where the Democrats could stand up.
Well, what does that mean? I mean, right now, President Trump and the State Department are the ones that are trying to negotiate a peace agreement, and they are the ones that are funding or are responsible. The Congress has been stepping up. It's on countless letters about how you need to do something about Gaza, how you're starving. We just did another one, Jamie Raskin and a number of others of us. But we got to put the pressure on this administration to demand that they tell Israel they have got to be feeding these starving children. The world is telling them that. That is unacceptable. But I'm also going to tell you that Israel's got a right to exist. I can't, people can have like this hate that's just there between 2 countries has been there forever. And we got to find a way that we bring peace to the Mideast. And I think many of the partners in the Mideast, other countries, are wanting to try to help do that too, because this continent, but I don't want to see anybody else die. I want the hostages released, and I don't want to see starving children in Gaza, and the blockade there is unacceptable.
But do you think that if Democrats were to unite on this issue, that it could be a step forward?
Are Republicans united on this issue? By the way, there's a lot of division, period. I mean, I don't think division's the right word. People are trying to navigate it. I know a lot of Republicans who feel equally strongly about what's happening to the starvation of children in Gaza. There are countries around the world that are saying that that's wrong. But they're also standing up against anti-Semitism, Israel having a right to exist. This is what creates wars. And, I found, by the way, what the Russian foreign minister, I think it was the foreign minister or prime tweeted last night about World War III should put chills down every one of our backbones. And we need to be solving these problems, not putting kerosene on what's happening in the Mideast, what's happening in Ukraine, and other places in the world.
This is the Metro on WDET, broadcasting from the Mackinac Policy Conference. I'm Robin Vincent. We're talking about what the Democrats need to do to win back voters. Our guest is Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. She represents the 6th Congressional District, including Washtenaw and Wayne counties. I want to shift gears, if we could, Congresswoman Dingell, to former President Biden. News has come out about his cancer diagnosis, as you know. In addition to that, there's been a lot of new reporting about the cognitive decline of the former president while he was in office. There's been a lot of new criticism lobbed at the Democratic Party for not pushing Biden to step down earlier and allow someone else to run for president in 2024. Why do you think Democrats weren't pushing harder to get President Biden to step aside for a different candidate?
There were other candidates out there. We had a primary process. Other candidates chose not to get into the election. The democratic process is the democratic process. I'm someone that isn't afraid to speak up and speak out. I've been fighting to have a much fairer, I was fighting again for a fairer primary system that doesn't have two small states that have a disproportional impact on the presidential nominating system, that don't reflect the diversity of this country. Diversity is a bad word, I know these days, but it's a word that's real, etc. So, I think Jake's recent book is half based on
Jake Tapper.
Jake Tapper wrote the most recent book that's getting all the attention. Some of it may be true. I've talked to people that.
And it asserts that there was a cover-up about Biden's decline.
And, I think there are incidences there. I mean, certainly Nancy Pelosi was very strong in pushing that he needed to step down. I think there are a lot of reasons, by the way, that Democrats lost the election in the fall. I wish, again, was telling people they weren't doing things that they needed to do. Why do people not listen to people that, Californians don't understand the middle of the country. Coastal elites drive me nuts some days, and I have friends who are coastal elites and take great offense at that. But maybe people all need to do a better job of listening to different states across the country. We are 50 different states.
Congresswoman Dingell, if I could, you just mentioned you think the Democrats did a lot of things wrong. Can you just very briefly just list what were the things that Democrats did wrong?
Let's go into union halls. Let's listen to what working men and women are feeling about how they're struggling, how they want to make a fair wage and have job security, and what are they going to have for health care and retirement. Those are some of the basic issues. We don't walk into halls and listen to individuals. What are the farmers saying? How are they struggling? As we talk, okay, what's happening on environmentalism? The president doesn't like the bipartisan infrastructure, the current president, President Trump, or the IRA. But the American people want clean, affordable water. Every person should have access to that. There is an in-between that environmental is that we can have both. And too many people, both sides have their far right and their far left, just for the record. That's so both sides, Republicans are going to have to worry about what happens to them in the next presidential election, and we need to get our act together.
You're describing a Democratic Party that I think a lot of people don't identify with any longer and don't feel
is familiar to them. A lot of people don't identify with the Republican Party either. What I want to say to you is there are a whole lot of people in the middle that they just want to know someone's going to fight for them so their democracy is safe, so that they can afford that. People don't want a lot. They want a job, a safe and secure job, so they can buy a home in a neighborhood that's safe and secure, that they can send their kids to a school, or they'll get a good education. They can put food on the table. They can go to the doctor when they need to. They can afford their medicine. If kids want to go to college, send them, and have a safe and secure retirement. That's what we don't talk about enough. And those are what most Americans care about and want.
Do Democrats have a follow the leader problem in that they're not able to make changes quick enough because they're too loyal to their leader, which is not that different from the Republican Party, which, as we know, is extremely loyal to President Trump.
You talk about a follow the leader problem.
Right.
I think that, quite frankly, both Hakeem Jeffries and Mike Johnson last week claimed this is where the election, the congressional election in 26 is going to be determined, was that vote. I know there were members that were petrified of that vote, that two of them voted present and didn't want to do the vote. The bill only passed by one vote, but they're afraid to cross Donald Trump, or will Elon Musk put millions of dollars in them against an election? I think I don't like circular firing squads. I think we need to get in a room and work issues out and talk about issues, which is what we're trying to do. And I think you got to elect leaders that you do respect. But I don't think Democrats have a follow the leader problem the way Republicans do. I think Democrats need to worry about circular firing squads.
Before we let you go, we've talked about a lot of different things that you think Democrats need to do. If you had to pull just one of those things out of your hat to highlight it, what would that be?
Oh, I think economics. I mean, one of the issues that we as Democrats, people are really worried about the cost of living. They're worried about affording their food. They're worried about housing, being able to afford rent or to buy a house. People are also, I think, concerned about ethics right now and what they're seeing and how they're seeing. That's another issue we probably don't talk about enough.
What can Democrats do in that regard? And I mean, are you talking about, for example, the unelected billionaire Elon Musk and the very questionable things that he's doing right now within and toward government agencies?
I think Doge there are no guardrails on Doge, but I think even more disgusting is the cryptocurrency dinner that Donald Trump had. And
where he charged
$1 million.
Yeah.
$1 million to go, and people are, there are no lines.
Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, she represents the 6th congressional district, including Washtenaw and Wayne counties. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro here at the Mackinac Policy Conference.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Coming up, we'll talk about the theme of this year's Mackinac Conference and the kinds of things politicians and business leaders hope to accomplish. That's right here on the Metro on WDET. Stay with us.